So good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name's Joe Calabrigo. I'm the town manager here with the town of Danville. I'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight to learn more about Danville's townwide landscaping and lighting assessment district, or the LLAD. This is an informational meeting that will provide some background on what the LLAD is, what it does, and provide some answers to some of the questions that we've received over the past week or so. So as we get started here, I would like to introduce some of my fellow panelists. We have Dave Castile, who's the town's Maintenance Services Director. We have our city attorney, Rob Ewing, Jen Starnes, who is our Communications and Economic Development Manager. We have with the firm of Francisco and Associates, who are the town's assessment district engineers, Ed Espinoza, who's our district engineer. Marie Sinceri is our city clerk, and she is helping us out with this Zoom meeting this evening. And we also have Ty Williams, who's our assistant town manager. I'm going to start by just saying that our LLAD provides critical funding for maintaining the town's parks and facilities, roadside, median landscaping, and street lighting. Danville, as you're aware, because you're joining this call tonight, is now in the process of seeking an adjustment in our LLAD assessments that our property owners pay. Ballots were mailed out to all of our property owners on April the 4th, and we all have until the public hearing on May the 20th to return them. So we're going to take the next few minutes to walk you through this process, and then we're going to be happy to field any questions. To submit questions tonight, you've got a few options, and I would direct you to the image that's on the screen. You can use the chat button at the bottom of your screen to send us questions. You can text or call the number that you see there, 925-575-6036, or you can email us at danville.ca.gov/LLAD. So we will respond to all of the questions that we receive at the end of our presentation this evening. So let's look at an overview of what we'd like to cover with you this evening. So you can see from what we have there, we are going to cover these 7 different points. We're going to talk about what an LLAD does, why the town needs an LLAD, what has changed, meaning since the last time we brought this forward to our property owners back in 2003. We'll talk a little bit about what the town has been and is continuing to do to manage our LLAD resources as carefully and prudently as we can. We'll talk about what your vote does and how that process works. We'll also cover how individual properties are assessed, and then moving forward, what's the next step in the process or what happens next. So let's start with what does an LLAD do? So LLADs are funding mechanisms that are established under state law to provide landscaping and lighting services, facilities, or other improvements. The town's LLAD dates back to when the town incorporated, when we inherited a district from Contra Costa County. All of the properties in Danville pay LLAD assessments that show up on our biannual property tax bills. The assessments are based upon the degree of benefit that each property receives from the improvements that are maintained by the LLAD. And this is based on a detailed engineer's report that is prepared annually for the district. So different properties pay different assessments based upon that benefit determination. as well as the land use classification of the property. In other words, residential versus commercial versus office, and so on. Because the LLAD is based upon special benefit to the property, it's considered an assessment rather than a tax under state law. The LLAD provides a dedicated source of revenue that is crucial for maintaining our parks, our roadside landscaping, street lighting, and public facilities. All of these are community assets that contribute to and support our residents' quality of life and support our property values. Let's continue on with what an LLAD does. So our district maintains about 200 acres of public parkland. That includes all 5 of our major community parks: Osage Station, Oak Hill Park, Sycamore Valley Park, Diablo Vista Park, and Hap McGee Ranch Park. It also includes several smaller parks, for example, Danville South, our town green in front of the library, Prospect Park Plaza, to name just a few. It also maintains 5 school parks that the town maintains through a partnership with the San Ramon Valley Unified School District. Continuing on, it maintains 60 acres of median and roadside landscaping and about 3,500 streetlights. These LLAD funds are restricted for those maintenance purposes only. So 100% of the revenues that are generated through the LLAD are devoted to paying for maintenance and utility costs. These assets, as I referenced earlier, support public safety, they support healthy lifestyle, they enhance property values, while benefiting all segments of our population and all of our age groups. So that's a little bit about what the LLAD does. So why do we need an LLAD? Well, Danville incorporated in 1982, and that was after the passage of the landmark Proposition 13 in 1978. So because of that timing, because Danville incorporated after Prop 13, we're considered a low property tax city or town. Now, to be clear, that doesn't mean that our property owners pay low property taxes. No such thing. Rather, it refers to the fact that the town receives just a fraction of the property taxes that are paid for town services, things like police, public works, planning, parks, and the like. On average, as you can see, about $7 out of every 100 in property tax that's paid by our property owners comes to the town. So if you've got a home that has an assessed value of $1 million, your property tax payment is $10,000 a year, the town receives $700. The other $93 out of 100 goes to pay for things like schools, fire, emergency medical services, county services, and so on. Our property taxes, all told, support about 20 different agencies whose services touch our community, our residents, our businesses in some way. The LLAD is the town's 3rd largest source of revenue, following only property tax and sales tax. Absent the LLAD, the town couldn't fund the cost to maintain our landscaping, our parks, and our street lighting. So what's changed and why is this process happening now? Well, we can see the graph filling out the screen there. Our LLAD assessment rates were last adjusted in 2003. Assessments at that time were and continue to be set at a flat rate with no annual escalator included. And it was interesting. I took a look just yesterday. If I go back to 2003, gas prices were about $1.84 a gallon. And when I bought gas over the weekend, I think I paid $4.69. So the point is, costs have changed quite a bit in the intervening 22 years. Revenue-wise, because our assessments have no escalator, and we combine that with the fact that the town has seen only very little growth since the year 2000. In fact, the total population has increased by only about 2%. LLAD revenues then have increased by only about 3% in the intervening 22 years. Expense-wise, in contrast to revenues, our LLAD expenses have tracked pretty closely to the Bay Area cost of living, Bay Area CPI over the last 20 years. Our maintenance costs have risen by about 78%. That is driven in large part by our utility costs, water and electricity, which are up by about 84%. The town has also, during that time, added some new features and amenities to our parks. We've added some street lighting and some other amenities. So that combination of increased cost of service, some additional features, all contribute to that increase in cost. Now, the other thing as we look forward that has changed is the assessment methodology. Since the last time the town went through this process in 2003, this has to do with quantifying the specific benefit that accrues to each individual property. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that momentarily. So as we look at the current fiscal year, the 24-25 fiscal year that we're in the midst of right now, we're looking at a potential LLAD shortfall of about $2.4 million. And the town is presently using the general fund and LLAD reserves to fund the shortfall. Now let's take a quick look at the audited numbers from last year. So here you see the LLAD funding gap based on our most recent audited figures, which are for the last fiscal year, 2023-24, the year that ended in June of 2024. Bear in mind that when the LLAD assessments were last increased in 2003, assessment revenues were paying for 100% of the LLAD costs. So by last year, the LLAD was running at a shortfall of about $1.8 million, with the general fund and the LLAD reserves being used to bridge that revenue gap. So as we continue to move forward, looking at the current fiscal year and into the future, LLAD reserves are going to be depleted, and the revenue and expenditure gap continues to grow as maintenance and utility costs continue to increase in order to continue to maintain our parks, landscaping, and street lighting at their current standards. This trend, as we continue to move forward, is not going to be sustainable for the town's general fund. So at this point, I'm going to hand things off to Dave Castile and ask Dave to tell us what the town is doing.
Well, thank you, Joe, and thank you to everyone that has joined us this evening and taking time out of their schedules to learn a little bit more about this process and how the town utilizes the LLAD. So on the staff side, realistically, seeing that we had a fixed revenue source for these amenities like roadside landscaping, parks, and street lighting, we've really proactively for a number of years now been going to great lengths to avoid cost increases, and really one of the mantras out here is always asking how can we reduce costs, knowing that this will be a continuous uphill battle. So some of the things that we've done along those lines include installing solar panels at many of our buildings, our main town offices, the Veterans Memorial Building, the Town Service Center, as well as Sycamore Valley Park and Diablo Vista Park. We've also, with all the town streetlights, the roughly 3,500 streetlights that Joe alluded to earlier, nearly all of those have been converted to LED, including all of the streetlights that the town specifically owns. We've also gone through our landscaped areas and within our parks and have removed a couple of acres worth of grass, which is pretty maintenance intensive and water heavy in areas that maybe were less utilized or less visible to try to save on watering costs. And we have really invested in trying to leverage technology when it comes to irrigation or anything else. In terms of irrigation, we have centralized irrigation systems, as well as utilizing underground irrigation sensors to measure moisture content, to only water as much as we need at sites to help really manage our water as efficiently as possible. And also at the staff side, we are performing irrigation inspections and repairs daily, really trying to minimize as much water waste as physically possible. Despite all that, to put into perspective the battle that we have been facing here, if you look back just a few years ago to fiscal year 21-22 compared to now, granted we're not all the way through this fiscal year just yet, But just 3 short years ago, we have used 17 million less gallons of water this year to irrigate our landscaping park-wide. Despite that, due to cost increases via East Bay Mud, we've actually already paid more this fiscal year than we did when we used 17 million more gallons of water back in 21-22. So that kind of helps put in perspective how, despite all of the ongoing efforts that we may be making, costs are increasing, costs that are outside of our control are increasing, and with a fixed revenue source, that will continue to be a challenge to try to maintain the town in the way that our residents and property owners have come to love and expect. So when the LLAD was last addressed in 2003, the intent was really to have the LLAD cover all of the eligible expenses. So that was all of roadside landscaping, all of the streetlight expenses, and half of the park and facility expenses. But as Joe just covered, now we're really seeing an increasing reliance on the general fund to help cover those costs, given that the revenue source is pretty much flat. So in short, we've really done all that we can to try to wait as long as possible to seek an increase. But inflation, unfortunately, means that cost increases are inevitable, and there's really no way for a fixed revenue source based on 2003 costs to keep up with that, unfortunately. So as the voter, I'm sure you're curious, what does my vote mean? So first, we'll start with a yes vote. If LLAD 2025-1, the new proposed LLAD, were to be approved, it would partially close the funding gap that Joe described earlier. Importantly, it would preserve the current standards of our roadside landscaping, our parks, and our street lighting. The standards that, from my perspective, make Danville what Danville is. Because at the staff level and at our town council level, we do understand the impact that these amenities have on property values and the quality of life, and are a big part of why folks do choose to live here in Danville. Another aspect of a potential yes vote on approving this would free up the general fund resources. Currently, $1.3, $1.4 million of general fund are going to help subsidize and cover the cost of the LLAD. It's important to recall that the LLAD funds can only be used for LLAD purposes. So those are very direct funds that are limited to being used for those resources, where general fund dollars can be used for anything, including police, recreation services, and other programming. So by decreasing the subsidy coming from the general fund, that does free up dollars that could be used elsewhere, whereas the LLAD funds do stay right where they are intended to be. If approved, the new LLAD would also provide long-term funding solutions to help keep the service levels that we've described where the property owners have come to expect for now and into the future. On the flip side, what does a no vote mean? So if the new proposed LLAD were not to be approved, then the existing LLAD 1983-1 would remain in effect. So property owners would continue to pay the assessments that they have been paying for the last 22 plus years. That would mean, costs will continue to go up as referenced. So the general fund subsidy used to cover those costs would continue to grow, which could impact other programs as dollars are reallocated away from there. At some point, like I said, we've really made every effort that we can to find ways to reduce cost and keep the service levels at current standards. That being said, if costs do continue to rise, absent an additional funding source, there will need to be some consideration to service level reductions to help reduce expenses. That's not something that any of us are fond of or want to do, but that would be a necessary outcome depending on the financials of the situation. So that could mean things like some of the lush green grass that we have now may not be quite as lush. Things like frequencies for weed control, mowing, pruning, and the like may have to be modified. All of these things that could potentially happen in order to help reduce expenses should necessary funding not be available. So some information on the assessments and how properties are assessed. These assessments are based on direct benefit. So Ed Espinoza, who's here with Francisco and Associates, has worked closely with the town actually for a number of years, but really over the last couple to take a look at the methodology and the benefit analysis as it affects all of the properties within town. It considers a variety of factors in terms of how much direct benefit each parcel is receiving from the amenities covered by the LLAD. And so I'll get into this a little bit more on the next slide, but this does cover everything from, depending on what side of town you're on, your proximity to street lighting, your proximity to parks, and the like. There are also different rates factored in for the assessment for multifamily and non-residential. We do focus on single family during meetings such as this due to the high percentage of single family property owners throughout the town. But as part of this, as Joe mentioned earlier, it does affect all property owners, and that does include multifamily and non-residential properties. So the current assessments, again, depending on the direct benefit received, that will affect how much a current property owner currently pays. The range of current assessments at the low end is $108 a year. On the high end is $305. The proposed LLAD, the low end would move up to $219 per year, while the top end would increase slightly to $329 per year. One other important factor on the proposed LLAD as it differs from the existing is this would include an escalator for Bay Area CPI or inflation. As we've alluded to, going back to 2003, the assessments were set and they have not changed since then. Meanwhile, as we all know, costs will inevitably increase. So this LLAD does include an escalator to help keep pace with inflation and rising costs as everything from utilities to contractors to supplies become more expensive. That escalator would be maxed out at 3% per year. So if Bay Area CPI for a year is say 1.5%, that would be the increase to the LLAD assessment for that year. If it were, going back to coming out of COVID, 7 or 8%, the assessment increase would be maxed at 3% for years such as those. And that really just allows the town to continue the service levels and be able to keep pace with rising costs and not have to potentially look at future increases to the LLAD. So a little bit more detailed information about how properties are assessed. So we have 4 general zones for the LLAD. Zones A and B apply to roadway landscaping. Zone C is street lighting, and Zone D is parks and community facilities. So no property owners pay into all of these areas. It is based again on the direct benefit received. So for roadway landscaping, there's Zone A and Zone B. All property owners pay one of these. No property owners pay both of these. So Zone A generally covers more of the west side of town and down to the south end. Zone B is more of the east side of town, so Camino Tasajera heading out east to the boundary of town. So all property owners, like I said, will pay one of these depending on the location of their property. For street lighting, there is perceived to be some benefit for all property owners in town for street lighting, even those that don't necessarily have street lighting on their actual streets. And this is because to get to and from a property, all folks are driving past street lighting, whether that be on Sycamore Valley Road, Camino Tasajera, San Ramon Valley Boulevard, El Cerro, the major streets that do have street lighting and are help keeping those roadways safe. All property owners do benefit from that, and so all property owners do pay what we'll refer to as the base street lighting fee, which you can see on the screen is $14.55 for the year. For those that do have street lighting on their streets, more local residential street lighting, those property owners do pay the increased assessment based on that direct benefit that they are receiving compared to those that may not have street lighting on their street. And then moving to Zone D for parks and facilities, similar concept to Zone C. All property owners pay into Zone D, given that all property owners do benefit from the parks and facilities within town. And that can be from those that are using our parks and facilities daily. We hope you're one of them. to those that recognize that our parks do add to the overall quality of life and property values within town. And then those that do live closer to parks within a half-mile radius of our parks, there is the increased assessment there based on the added benefit that one receives from living that much closer to a park or facility. Okay, so some procedural aspects. What happens next? So the ballots, as you all know, if you're here, have been mailed to all affected property owners in town. If you look at the ballots, they are individualized. They all have the property's current and proposed assessment, which you can see the arrow on the screen pointing to the blue ballot. The bottom right hand of the ballot does show the property's current and proposed assessment. So everybody is getting information that pertains directly to them on these ballots that are being mailed. There's the major protest rule. So if the majority of the returned ballots do not oppose the rate adjustment, then the new LLAD can be implemented. It is a weighted vote. So those who pay more under the proposed assessments, that vote carries a bit more weight than those that pay a lower assessment. All votes certainly count, but it is a weighted assessment based on all returned ballots. So if it is approved, then the new proposed assessment rates would go into effect for next fiscal year, which starts July 1. So it would be reflected on the property tax bills coming at the end of the year. If not approved, as mentioned earlier, the existing assessments from the current LLAD would remain in place. All right, and then just briefly touching on the timeline, as mentioned, the ballots went out a little over a week ago. There's a 45-day balloting period, and so at the May 20th Town Council meeting, there will be a public hearing to declare the balloting period is closed, so all ballots will need to be received by that time. The ballots will then be tabulated, and we will return to Town Council at the June 3rd meeting to declare the results of the ballot tabulation. If property owners favor the proposed LLAD, and a resolution will be adopted confirming that assessment. If not, a resolution will be adopted going back to the existing LLAD. And then if approved, August 10th is the deadline to procedurally submit all the paperwork to the county to have everything processed in time. And then lastly, as Joe started off by saying, we really want to make sure that we can answer everyone's questions and have property owners as informed as possible. So with that, if there are questions, you can use the chat feature here on Zoom. We also have the phone number that you can call or text, and the email address if you have questions that you want to ask afterwards. And with that, I will turn things over to Jen Starnes, our communications manager, as she's been monitoring the questions via chat and text and email, and let her help guide that.
Right. Thank you, Dave. And thank you, Joe. I have a few questions for you. One, I just wanted to cover a question that has come up a lot, and that is just clarification on the new assessment, the proposed assessment versus the existing. And I think I could just clarify really quickly and confirm that the new LLAD is completely new and replace the existing. So when you see on your ballot that you have an existing LLAD assessment from 1983 and you have a proposed LLAD assessment from 2025, the 2025, if approved, would replace the old one. It is not in addition to. And this is a question I think that might be one for Ed to step in on. Karen is asking, why is the benefit less for condo, duet, and townhome versus single family?
Thank you,
Ed,
Jen.
can you help us that? Thanks.
Sure thing. Thank you, Jen. That's a great question. Thank you for the opportunity to address it this evening. So when we're referring to benefit as it relates to assessments, we're talking about a benefit to property. And so there's a number of property characteristics for single family homes that lead to higher assessments as compared to condos and duets and townhomes, not just in the town of Danville, but really statewide. And a few of those characteristics are, generally speaking, single family homes have larger parcel area, meaning lot area, because usually it's detached product as compared to condominiums, duets, and townhomes, which are typically attached product. The other thing is that single-family homes on average have greater building square footage, and which usually means that there's a greater number of people per household. And so for these reasons, generally single-family homes will have a higher assessment rate as compared to condos, duets, and townhomes. And again, it's not just in the town of Danville. It's really an industry standard statewide. It's usually what is seen for landscape and lighting assessment districts throughout the state.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Let's see. So there's been quite a few questions about the escalator. So one question, Laura is asking, has there been any thought to forming the new LLAD without the up to 3% annual adjustment? And I believe the shortest answer to that is we don't want to be here in 20 years again, having this significant general funding gap. But Ed or Joe, do you have anything to add to that? Ed, perhaps maybe you could address if this is something that you've seen standard on districts that you've been involved with.
Thank you, Jen. Yes, it's very, very typical, and the reason being is the annual escalator is intended to keep up with inflationary maintenance costs, especially utility. Utility costs are rising at a very high pace throughout the state, and so it is very common to apply an annual escalator. And the 3% cap was chosen because on average, historically, 10-year average, the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, as published by the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, on average, it has been about 3% for that 10-year average.
Yeah, I'm just going to add to what Ed has said that I think from a policy perspective, the 3% is really up to 3%. As we go back to 22 years ago, had there been some sort of a nominal escalator that was included as part of the rates back then, the deficit that we're running at right now would have been quite a bit less. And so, I think we're looking at, given the what's involved in going through this balloting process, which is essentially a majority protest process, and to Ed's point, in particular, these utility costs that I think, like all of the rest of you, I just received a notice in my mail today indicating that my East Bay mud rates are due to go up yet again, and that's been the same with PG&E as well. So the thought is that there wants to be some ability to be able to make some adjustments that will allow us to be able to offset those kinds of increases.
Thank you. That is a question that has come up a lot, and just Dave did a great job of clarifying that it is whatever the CPI is, no higher than 3%. So right now, I think I looked, the CPI is like 2.7. So just make sure that you remember that when we're talking about the escalator. Another good question is, Don wants to see the assessment categories again. I believe that was on slide 12. And Dave, if you are able to get back there, but Don, I will also tell you that if you email us at llad@danville.ca.gov, it's available right at the bottom. I would be happy to look up your address if you send it to me and give you a breakdown of which aspects you are paying in your LLAD and why. So hopefully this slide does help you, but feel free to let us know, to email me your address at the LLAD email address, and I'll give you a breakdown. So Dave, do you want to walk through the additional benefits in Zone C and Zone D as well, and just what people pay? Everybody pays only A or B, everybody pays C, and just do a quick walkthrough to recap that.
Sure. Yeah, so as kind of mentioned earlier, all property owners pay into either Zone A or Zone B for roadside landscaping, depending on where in town they live and what landscaping they benefit from. For Zone C, which covers street lighting, all property owners receive some form of benefit from street lighting, keeping our major arterials safe and helping folks get to and from their properties. So all property owners pay that base rate, $14.55. Those that do have street lighting on their actual streets do pay the increased assessment, the additional assessment based on the additional benefit that they are deriving from the streetlights directly on their street. And then similarly with the parks and community facilities, all property owners do derive some form of benefit from the town's parks, whether that be utilizing them themselves or benefiting from the impact it has on property values here in town. In addition, those that do live within a half-mile radius of parks, and that'd be the town's major parks as well as the school parks and other parks the town maintains. There is a slight additional assessment for the additional benefit derived from those properties.
All right, thank you. And one more question that I'm seeing here is that we have a question asking what portion of town facilities, for example, streetlights, are maintained by the county?
Well, I don't believe any streetlights are maintained by the county, especially in regards to the LLAD. The LLAD funds go to town maintained facilities. On the larger scale picture with the county, the town does have an agreement with the county in regards to Hat McGee Ranch Park, where the town and the county jointly own and operate Hat McGee Ranch Park and share in the cost of that operation. Again, the LLAD funding that comes into the town is only to pay for the town's portion of those costs. And then the only other thing that I can think of is that the town does contract with county signal maintenance to maintain our traffic signals. However, again, that is not an LLAD expense, and it is something that the town pays just like we would pay any other contractor. It's just been found to be most efficient and affordable working directly with county signal maintenance for that purpose.
All right, thank you. I think that one other question that I've seen come up a lot that we have been talking about a lot amongst ourselves is the previous LLAD and the kind of grandfathered in senior rebate that was available under the previous LLAD. Joe, maybe you can talk us through why that part of the rebate isn't appropriate under the new methodology, since it is specific to the property and not the inhabitants of the property.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. And you know, Ed and or Rob should feel free to jump in on this. The basic premise here is that what we're looking at is an assessment on property. And the assessment is based on the benefit that accrues to the property for all of the various improvements that are being maintained by the district. And so from that standpoint, the senior rebate that has been included in the with the previous district that we have in place right now goes a little bit against the grain when it comes to that. It you know, based on current assessment district law and the requirements that we need to adhere to, the age of the occupants of the property are not something that we can consider with respect to the assessment district methodology, because the benefit accrues to the property, not specifically to the property owner. Rob, Ed, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. You've covered it. It's a legal question that arises from Prop 218, which the voters passed statewide. But the only other thing to clarify is that the senior rebate that has been in place was only for 50% of the cost of the Zone D parks component of the old LLAD. There was no senior rebate on any of the landscape or street lighting portions.
Great. Another couple of notes on that I think have helped some of the people that I've had conversations with is we've increased, and Dave could perhaps talk to this, we've increased the amount of park amenities that are specific to not necessarily seniors, but specific to multi-generational experiences. And we also are wanting to remind folks that, again, exactly how the assessment is on the property, if that property changes hands, the property value built up by the amenities in the LLAD also stay with the property. I don't see any other questions in the chat, but I will check one more time. And I think that one more thing that came up a lot is the process. So why there was so much information included in the public hearing notice that was sent out, as well as why are we doing this now? I know the town has been working on this for quite a while and watching it, and it's a public process that is transparent and does take some amount of time. So Dave gave us an overview of the ballot process, but Joe, perhaps you can talk about how long the town has been watching this issue and what we've done up to this point to plan to bring this to the public.
Sure. Well, I think, as Dave has already explained it, I mean, technically what we're dealing with here is a majority protest process under assessment district law, which means that if a majority of the weighted ballots returned oppose the increase, then the increase can't be put into place. I think that the town's philosophy has always been one of being a prudent fiscal manager. And so from that standpoint, given the fact that these rates have always been set at a flat rate, as time has gone by, we've gone year to year. Dave has described how the town has endeavored to control and reduce costs in areas where we were able to do that. And I think that we have continued to do that. So it's really a confluence of factors that bring us to where we are now. I think that the position that our town council has taken is that, rather than going back every 2 or 3 or 4 years and asking for an increase in these rates, we have endeavored to continue to provide the service and cover the costs through the means that we have had available to do that, which, as we have said, have involved using the general fund in part and being able to use some of the district reserves. But it has become increasingly apparent over the last couple of years that it was going to be necessary to go back and bring this issue back to our property owners. So, I would say that the reason that it's been so long since we've done this is that we have tried to forestall this rate adjustment for as long as we could through the other means that have been available to the town, in the hopes that at this point, as we go back to our property owners and sort of lay out the facts and what these improvements are, the benefits that they provide, and the steps that we've taken to try to control those costs, they'll be able to see that. And I will say that one of the things that I've included in my response to folks who I've responded to email-wise is that, this is a decision that's in the hands of our property owners. The town will continue to do the best that it possibly can to maintain all of these facilities to the highest possible standards with the revenue that's available to do that. But as you've heard, as we move forward now, that is a challenge that will be greater in its scope, simply because there are costs that we don't have the ability to control directly, but that we can't do without.
Jen, maybe I can answer your question about why so much information being put out. Two pieces there. One is we're legally required to. A lot of the information, I know everyone who got the ballot and the notice is 4 pages. A lot of that is information that's specifically required by state law for us to put out there. But I think the other thing that's important for folks to remember is that the town council was well aware of the fact that since we haven't done this in 22 years, there's probably a fair number of folks in town who don't know what an LLAD is, didn't realize it was a line item on their property tax bill. And the council really wanted to make sure that everyone understood what they were being asked to vote on, rather than just get something and not have any information. So that's been a conscious effort on the part of both the town council and the staff.
And Rob, you might want to add or potentially throw it over to Ed to address that, just as the process and what we're following with the public notice and the public hearing is part of a legal requirement, so is the spending of the funds. So LLAD funds are restricted. I've seen some concerns about where the funds are going to be spent. Are they going to be spent for newer things to support local development? Can you address that question as well?
I guess I can answer. I can start on the sort of bigger picture, and then Ed maybe wants to chime in a little. Yeah, so the engineer's report, which is available online if anybody wants to read it, even when we don't increase the rates, we still every year have to adopt a report that shows what we spent in the current fiscal year on LLAD activities and what we anticipate we're going to spend in the coming year on LLAD activities, and in some detail. And that's required by state law. And then on top of that, every year when the town does an audit, the auditors look specifically at where those monies were spent and confirm that they were in fact spent on appropriate activities.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. The only thing I would add is, so the landscape and lighting assessment districts are governed by the Landscape and Lighting Act of 1972. And the Landscape and Lighting Act of 1972 has very specific improvement types and services that can be provided under the act. And so generally speaking, it's parks, landscaping, and street lighting. So LAD money cannot be spent on items outside of that, public safety and things like that. So there is that. And also under the Landscape and Lighting Act, by law, the town has to have a separate fund where all the assessment revenues that are collected are tracked, and also the expenditures that are spent every year are also tracked within that same fund, with the goal of the LAD fund being self-sufficient. And so that's why LAD money it's not discretionary. It has a specific purpose, and by law the money has to be spent within the budget that's outlined in the annual engineer's report, as Rob described, that is brought forth to council every year for approval.
Yeah, and I'm going to add one more thing if I can, and that is that the LLAD does not pay for new development per se. As new development comes along, those new developments pay development impact fees that go toward improvements that are intended to offset the impact that's associated with that new development. So for example, as a new development project comes along, they're going to pay a per unit park dedication fee. And those dollars are going to be used to make improvements to town park facilities that will benefit not only the residents of that new development, but our town residents as well. So the LLAD doesn't pay for new development in that way.
That's a great reminder. And also, of course, people purchasing new homes in Danville or purchasing any homes in Danville will still pay into the LLAD and contribute like all property owners do, including the town, including the school districts, including residential and non-residential property owners. I don't have any additional questions on the chat, and I think we've addressed a lot of the questions that I've been seeing around on email and calling. Again, just if anybody would like a breakdown of their zones and what goes into their LLAD assessment that's proposed, and a comparison to your existing, feel free to email us at that email address down there at the bottom, llad@danville.ca.gov. And if you'd like to share this presentation with anybody, it will be available at danville.ca.gov/LLAD. Dave, if you want to show that last slide again, if you don't mind. The recording of this presentation will be available online tomorrow. If you wanted to share this, if you want to look at it again, it will be available at that website address there, www.danville.ca.gov/LLAD. Joe, do you have anything you want to add to close us out?
No, I would just like to thank the folks who joined us this evening to learn a little bit more about this process and ask some questions. I know that with some of you, we will be forwarding some additional information and responses back to you shortly. But please feel free to reach out and contact us if there are additional questions or additional information that you'd like. And I should acknowledge, I should have acknowledged it at the beginning, but I will acknowledge it now. I can see from looking at our attendees this evening that our mayor, vice mayor, and a number of our council members have been watching this evening as well. So thanks again for taking a little bit of time away from your evening to join us. And we wish you a good rest of the evening. Thank you.